Well, hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday to you. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Ms.B and her special guest, Kush Shukla, Esquire, right here on the Leader's Voice every third Sunday at 1 p.m. East Coast time. Hey, Kush.
Hey, Ms.B, how are you doing today?
I'm excited to see you. I'm excited to talk about the topic. I'm just excited. But everybody, in case you did not know, Kush Shukla has been with us for a while. He comes on only on once a month. But Kush, in case they have not caught your introduction, would you take this time to tell them a little bit about yourself again, please?
So, my name is Kush Shukla. I work with the law firm Meirowitz Wasserberg, where we handle different types of personal injury matters, any matter where somebody's rights have been violated. We're based out of New York City. However, we have offices all across the country, and we just, we try to help people out in their time of need. If anybody needs to speak to an attorney, we offer a free consultation, and we're able to advise people to move forward. Um, yeah, and today we're talking about what to do if you're in a car accident.
Man, let me tell you something. I was so excited when he told me what he wanted to talk about. If you have not heard, and most people have heard, about the pileup in Texas, but it's not just there. There's always pileup somewhere, especially in the states that have bad weather mostly all the time. But this particular one, unless I have it wrong, is reported to have had 133 car pileup. And the last check was 6 fatalities. Unfortunately, I'm just blessed to hear that no other fatalities have been reported. But when Kush said that, I immediately thought about all of the accidents, whether they're local fender benders and some accidents, single cars that have taken fatal lives. It's just a lot involved with bad weather driving. And it's just not too bad weather. But when he said that, I was excited. So, Kush, what made you decide to pick this topic today?
Well, it affects everybody. I mean, like you said recently, with all the accidents reported across the country due to the bad weather. But even when the weather is fine, people get into accidents. It's a thing that happens, and I want to make sure people know their rights because there's certain timeline and deadlines that they have to meet in order to make sure that they're able to pursue a claim if they have one.
Before we get too deep, I can't help from going back to these accidents. When I was when I was a young driver, the first thing they said was make sure you don't drive too close, because if you hit somebody, even if it's their fault, it's going to be your fault because you rear-ended them. Well, Kush, everybody rears-ended everybody in this accident. Who gets the liability? Is it everybody who hits somebody from behind? How does that work when it's a multiple car pileup?
Well, it really depends on the facts of each case, but usually the person behind is required to give a good amount of space from the person in front of them, from the vehicle in front of them. And when there's extreme weather conditions, that spacing is there's even more spacing required. So usually the person that's behind, legally, technically speaking, is usually always the person at fault because they're required under the law to give an adequate amount of spacing so that they can stop in order to prevent any type of impact or accident.
I did not watch a lot of the footage, but the immediate footage that I saw was when that FedEx truck piled up on top of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so they didn't have, I mean, even if they attempted to stop, they slid. That truck was so far behind. And then other people were just like, I can't go anywhere. So let me just ask you, from a legal standpoint, even though the charges have to be filed, are they really going to, I shouldn't say that. Can we expect them to really be charged formally, or is it just a formality?
Well, a lot of the times when you have these car accident cases, people bring insurance claims. Most of the time, it's not a criminal matter, it's a civil matter. So people will bring a claim against the insurance company of that FedEx vehicle, or they'll bring an insurance claim against a personal insurance holder's vehicle. And it's usually, most of the matters are usually resolved without having to go to court. And many states around the country have what's called no fault liability, right? So if you're involved in a car accident and you make a claim within the exact statutory period, for many states, it's 30 days from the date of accident, you're entitled to a certain amount of coverage, and the insurance carriers will not even look at who's at fault. And that coverage is supposed to go towards any medical costs that you might have. So that goes to any type of physical therapy, that goes to any type of surgeries or anything that you may have to undergo. But for up to a certain amount, depending on the state, they do not even look at who's at fault. But you have to make that claim within the statutory time period. So, if, like, for example, New York has no fault up to $50,000 for your medical costs, but you must make that claim within 30 days of the accident. Sorry, Ms.B.
No, I muted myself for a reason. Listen, and I'm going to get out the multiple car pilot, but you said 30 days to make a claim. I'm just hypothetically speaking, because you hear a lot of these people receive some serious injuries. Is there a waiver based on the fact that they're unable to file that claim?
I mean, you can get an excuse for not filing a claim if somebody, for example, is unconscious and they're not able to, do something within that time period. Yes, there are waivers for what the law says or defines as good cause. So if you have good cause, yes, you can get additional time period. For people that are in an accident and they're able to communicate, I would strongly recommend that, number one, they look, take care of themselves and their safety, but also that they contact an attorney as soon as possible. Many attorneys in this field, this operation of dealing with car accidents, they take on these cases as a contingency fee basis. So you're not being charged to talk to an attorney. You're not being charged if the attorney takes your case. The attorney only wins if you win. And most of the time, and I think it's probably standard across the country, it's a 1/3 attorney's fee for these types of matters.
I'm loving that. They back in my day used to call them ambulance chasers. Oh, there's an accident. Oh, let me go get them. That being said, you said don't hesitate to contact a lawyer. For those who are listening, that includes the family members of those involved on behalf of the injured. Kush, again, I don't want to stay stuck on the pileups, but whether it's a single car or a multiple car, what if the individuals don't have liability or any type of insurance? What does the person do then?
Many states require every car owner, every operator of a vehicle to have some level of insurance in order to be on the road. Many states have what's called basically a underlying insurance that the state runs. So, for example, if for whatever reason an owner of a vehicle did not have their insurance and they get into a car accident with somebody else, with another vehicle, the person of the second vehicle can still contact the state's insurance carrier, which acts as an underwriter for vehicles that are uninsured that are on the road. So there still are options there. And also you can look at your own insurance coverage as well. And then also, for example, if you're a passenger in a vehicle and you have your own insurance, or a member of your household has some type of insurance, they may be on the hook as well, because sometimes a household member's insurance could keep you covered as well if you're in a car accident. You have to look at the facts of each case, but there are avenues of recourse if somebody is not insured.
Speaking of insurance, what about all these medical bills? Say, for instance, that was a big trucking company. He just ran over top, and I'm sure some of those fatalities was a direct relation to that 18-wheeler piling on top of them. What about the companies that are involved in these pileups or single car accidents? Do they cover the medical insurance for everybody involved if a claim is brought against them?
So that's why it's extremely important to get your claim within the statutory time period, because for many states, there's a requirement that these insurance carriers pay your medical bills while you're getting treatment, even while the claim is pending. So it's really important. I've had cases where people have had to get physical therapy that's pretty expensive, but because they filed their no-fault claim within the statutory time period, their physical therapy is covered. So it's really important to make sure that you put together that claim as soon as possible because you don't want to miss that deadline.
Man, when we talk about deadlines, okay, they missed the deadline. What's the recourse? Okay, so let's just say car number 27 missed the deadline, and it was a direct hit from the 18-wheeler, and they missed the deadline. What happens to them? Are they on the hook for all of the medical bills, their own personal loss? What's the end course?
So for most of these cases, right, if you miss the deadline, I'm referring to the no fault deadline that many states have, which is 30 days from the accident, that covers, they don't even look at the fault, they don't look at who's at fault to cover medical damages. There are other deadlines after that to bring a personal injury claim. It really depends on the state. New York is 3 years from the injury. Other states have 2 years, 1 year, really depends. You can still bring a claim, but you may not be entitled to that no fault claim that many states have, where they don't look at who's at fault and it's strictly there to cover medical expenses. So it really depends. But if you do miss a deadline, like I said earlier, you do have one option. You can claim that you missed it for good cause. Either you were too injured to contact an attorney or too injured to do something within that statutory time period. But it becomes much more difficult because you have a burden to prove that you had good cause for missing that deadline.
Let's talk about pedestrians. And unfortunately, it happens. People, oh, I thought I hit a deer. I thought it was a bump in the road, and they keep going. Some of them really believe that, but some of them are just running like chickens. What happens to the victim of a hit and run? How do they have deadlines that they need to meet in order? Okay, you're shaking your head. Keep going.
No, I was just going to say that's a really amazing question. That's a great question, actually, because it's complex. So a couple of things. If you're involved in a hit and run, say it's your hit and run and there's two vehicles involved, right? If you're involved in hit and run, you can make a claim against your own insurance carrier, number one. Two, you can basically, when you make a claim against your insurance carrier, you can state in that formal claim that you believe there is another party involved, but you don't know the information of that vehicle just yet, so therefore you cannot make a formal claim against the other party. That's basically good cause right there. If you're involved in a hit and run and the police are still investigating who hit your vehicle, then obviously you can't make a claim against that vehicle's insurance carrier or the operator of the vehicle or the owner of the vehicle. I'm actually handling a case right now where somebody was involved, and unfortunately this person passed away. They were in an Uber and they were hit by another vehicle that sped off afterwards. And the police are currently investigating that. And eventually, when they find that information, I'll be able to have that other operator on the hook. Another important thing of hiring an attorney is sometimes we're able to do our own investigation. So if I have somebody that's involved in a hit and run, a lot of times I will hire my own private investigator to look to see who that vehicle could be. We'll look to see if there's any surveillance videos of the general area where that person was hit, highway footage, local store footage, to see if we can do some type of identification of that other vehicle. But if you don't know the other vehicle, you have good cause to make your claim against the other vehicle later on.
In the event that there's a fatality, and I understand about property damage and that type of thing, does the family have the option to go after a civil lawsuit if there's a death?
Yes, in many states, they have what's called a wrongful death statute. And that basically means if somebody passes away due to the negligence of another person, in a car accident, it may be something else as well, the family, the next of kin, have a right to bring a cause of action on behalf of the estate of the victim against whoever is negligent. So yes, family members do. If the decedent left a wife, the wife may be able to bring an action. They left children, parents, siblings. It really depends. Every state, or if they have a will as well and identifies who the next in line is, then it would be according to the will. It really depends on the state and the what's called intestate law. Basically, it's the law that establishes who's next in line to as a beneficiary of the decedent's estate.
This may sound, well, no, it's not a silly question, but have you had cases where the pedestrian was actually at fault and did not receive any compensation?
No, I haven't. A lot of these cases are gray, and there's arguments on both sides. And when that's the case, both sides realize that it's probably in the best interest to settle than rather than go to a jury and spend a tremendous amount of time, energy, and money on a case that could go either way. But yeah, many of the cases, it's really a gray area of who's actually at fault. And just so you know, if anybody's involved in an accident, the first thing that they need to be aware of is their own safety. If they're still able to move the vehicle, so just please pull it to the side of the road so it's not impeding traffic. And then two, they should probably call the police because it's very important to get that police report. That police report is what attorneys like me will use in order to help with their case. And they should make a statement to the police that they'll be asked to make a statement to the police. They need to speak to an attorney right then and there. They can call an attorney as well to make sure they make the right statement if they have an attorney in mind. And then also, right afterwards, they should get medical attention. It's extremely important that they get medical attention to whatever injuries that they may have. A lot of times, though, in motor vehicle accidents, sometimes you feel fine right after the accident, but you don't feel the injury until days later. And you may not notice those injuries until days later, but it's important to go to the doctor then. Because also, if you were to have a lawsuit, I can't make claims just based on your description, a client's description of how they're feeling. It has to be documented medical evidence that they have pain, that they have some type of suffering, that they have, fractures, whatever it might be. But it has to be backed up by medical evidence.
Speaking of backed up by evidence, the move over law. Driving down the highway, you're in the right-hand lane. Popo got his butt stuck out on the right shoulder behind somebody. And you got 3 18-wheelers on the left side of you, and you can't move over. His butt is stuck out. You can't move over. The closer you get, the more you realize you're going to tap him. Is that still the driver's fault, or is it a Popo's fault?
Well, if they're sticking into the lane, I mean, they shouldn't be sticking out into their lane to begin with, but also you as the vehicle approaching the vehicle ahead of you, in many instances, the person behind, like I mentioned before, with like the rear ending, is usually the person that's deemed by the law at fault. So in that instance, I would recommend that the person behind stops or signals to move over to the lane or gives a light honk, whatever it might be. But a lot of the times the law favors people in motor vehicle accidents that are ahead of the vehicle behind them. So if you're a vehicle behind them, you're usually, technically speaking, under the law at fault.
I've seen so many almost accidents like that. And I guess the people think they may have enough room to clear it. I have seen things happen like that where the left lane is full of traffic. You got a bunch of people behind you and you're slowing down, but the people behind you aren't. And you're like, okay, I can't stop in the middle of this middle lane. And I've seen them almost to the point where the nose is pointing, at the car that they're stopping, and their fender is like, you got to move over no matter what. And it's sad, but like you said, if they're coming up from the rear end, they're the one that's going to have the touch and feely type of charge. So that's sad. Okay, so let's keep moving with these auto accidents. So here we are. It's 3:00 in the morning, fog, they got road work going on, and you see flashing lights. Then when the fog clears, even if you're doing 35, 40, that's still fast. And before you know it, there's a worker. Bop! and you bump somebody. You've hit a road worker. How's that going to work? Can you claim visibility issues, or he was in the wrong place at the wrong time? How does that work?
So many times when they have road workers doing construction on the highway, they put up signs that say, slow down, caution, road work. And they actually put up signs that talk about fines if you were to hit a road worker. At least I've seen this in New York and New Jersey. You have to drive extra careful. There's more onus on you to drive more careful if you're in a situation where there's construction or there's low visibility. It really is on the person driving to take that extra step of precaution and be extra careful in those situations. You could make an argument, though, that there shouldn't be anybody doing road work or that type of work, construction on a highway or a street in that type of those type of conditions. So it would be, I would say this one's a little more of a gray area, but I would highly recommend that, when you see these signs for road work, that you take notice of it and you drive extra cautiously because you don't want to be in that situation.
No, you don't. I know I'm coming with a lot of hypothetical situations, but it's life, and people are experiencing a lot of things like that. If you have an accident in a parking lot, are the same laws applicable as if you were on a roadway, or do you have different laws for parking lot accidents?
No, it's the same type of law. It's all general negligence law. People have a duty when they're in a vehicle to make sure that they're not using that vehicle in a negligent manner and hurting somebody else. So it's negligence in a parking lot, and it's the circumstances and conditions of a parking lot versus negligence on a highway or road, and it's the circumstances and conditions of a highway or road. Obviously, in a parking lot, you should be driving much slower because there's a lot of pedestrians there, and there's people with their families and their children, and they have their shopping carts or whatever they might be, and you need to take that into consideration. On a street, you may drive 25 miles per hour, 30 miles per hour, but obviously that does not transcend to when you're in a parking lot and there's so many different pedestrians and cars pulling in and out. So I think the only difference is that your duty is a heightened duty in a parking lot, and the steps and precautions that you need to take are a heightened type of level than it would be on a street because of the circumstances that you're in.
We've talked about pedestrians, but what about cyclists? Not motorcycles at this point, but cyclists themselves. A lot of them don't understand the rules, even though they say they do. For general reference, which direction should a cyclist be going? And if they're hit by a motor vehicle, whose fault is it?
So cyclists need to be going in the direction of traffic. And this is a huge issue, especially where I live in New York City. Actually, cyclist deaths have went up this past year, which is somewhat surprising because the level of traffic over the past year in 2020 went down because of the pandemic, because of stay-at-home orders and things like that. But it went up, and it's a huge issue here. As far as who's at fault, it really depends on the facts of each case. If a cyclist is going into a car lane, then the cyclist will probably be at fault. If the vehicle, leans over to the cyclist and the vehicle is at fault, it's really a question of fact in every single instance. In many locations around the country, there are bicycle lanes. Even I would recommend to cyclists to take advantage of those streets with lanes in it because you have an extra level of protection. But it depends on so many different factors there. Recently, I know in New York City, there was a case where a cyclist was hit by a bus, a New York City bus, and they passed away, unfortunately, but the cyclist was in a bus lane, meaning that cyclist had no right to be in that lane. So the bus was not held to be at fault. It's things like that. You really have to look at the facts of each circumstance to deem who's negligent. Like I said, it's all negligent law. It's based on who acted in an unreasonable manner in that situation.
And not every motorcyclist is unreasonable in handling their equipment, but some are. But in the event that you have someone who is reasonably responsible and they're involved in a traffic accident with a motor vehicle, a bus, or 18-wheeler, but everybody wants to say it's the motorcyclist's fault. I'm being honest. Oh, that motorcycle did this and that. And so they didn't cut in and out of lanes. They were doing their, what they're supposed to do. And then you have people who either want to go up, try to pass them wrong, or ride up on the bumper wrong. And then when the motorcyclist tried to stop. For general reference, could you give some good safety tips for motorcyclists?
Yeah, so I actually have a motorcycle license myself. I don't have a motorcycle though. I would love to ride a motorcycle, but I don't because of the safety issues, especially in a city like New York City. But one thing I'll say is that they should take classes. There's a lot of classes out there that the DMV recommends, that different schools recommend as well, for defensive driving. Not just for motorcycles, actually for cars as well, for defensive driving, to make sure that you know the procedures and steps that you can take in order to make sure that you're not involved in an accident. So you're more of an active driver rather than a passive one, making sure that you're putting yourself in a situation to avoid those accidents. But what I would recommend for motorcyclists especially is to make sure they stay in their lane. A lot of times you see motorcycles when there's a lot of traffic, they're weaving through different cars, and that is a potential hazard for them. If a vehicle slightly leans over or what have you, that could lead to an accident. And it doesn't take much for somebody on a motorcycle to get extremely hurt. Like, if they're going even at a slow pace and somebody else hits them, they could fly off that motorcycle and be hurt tremendously. It does not take much.
No, it doesn't. And speaking of does not take much, I think up there they have the street lights with the hand stop go. I don't know, but what about pedestrians crossing when they're supposed to cross and drivers don't pay attention to the signs and they're struck? And they want to say they didn't see them. Let's talk about being struck as pedestrian when you have the right of way.
Well, if you're a pedestrian, you have the right of way. Obviously, the vehicle is negligent. There's no question about that. Um, you have a case against the vehicle, their insurance carrier, and then also if you are a vehicle owner yourself and you get struck, a lot of times your insurance will help cover it as well. Or if you have a member in your family that is a vehicle owner with insurance, you might be able to access that insurance coverage as well. So you need to look into those different scenarios too.
Well, I have one more.
Sure.
The elderly, bless their little hearts. I am 65 years old and I'm blessed to say I'm still driving. I'm, alert enough to know when to stop and go. And not everybody my age is, but I don't want to put everybody in a box and say, oh, everybody at 75 should turn in a license. That's not true. But if you could recommend something to protect the elderly who are still alert enough to drive, what would you recommend? Or should they just turn in their license at a certain age?
Well, I think the DMV for many states, they have programs to constantly check in on people and to make sure they're capable of driving and they're able to see, and they have different tests. I know, like for example, with me, every few years I have to go back to the DMV and do like an eye exam or things of that nature. So I recommend obviously that everybody stays up to date with the requirements of their state as far as driving goes. But also to be honest with themselves, if they get to a certain age and it becomes much more difficult driving, then they shouldn't be out there. It's their safety and their lives, and it affects their family, obviously. And that's the only advice I can give to them at this moment. I hope, and I know it might be a topic for another day, because this is where it gets a little bit more complicated, is that there's a huge push for autonomous electric vehicles in this country, and I think the studies show that it would lead to a decline in motor vehicle accidents. It runs into a whole gambit of legal liability issues if there is an accident. So it's interesting, but hopefully, these studies about the decline of accidents on these vehicles is correct and it works out, and people that are elderly can still get from point A to point B and not have to worry.
It's I try to keep on up on that type of technology because of prophecy, but that's a whole nother story. But that being said, there have been some things made public about 18-wheelers on the road, driverless, the Tesla cars. There are a lot of things out there that people, and the Eastern countries are, I don't want to say the Asian countries, but the Japanese, the Chinese, they're far more advanced in those type of modes of transportation, even the trackless trains running on air. And, there's a lot of things going on. So as far as the economy is concerned, I'm gonna be honest with you, because we talked about the impact of technology on the economy before. While we're looking at safety, the industry that requires drivers such as the 18-wheelers or such as the Uber drivers and that type of thing, they're going to be out of work. And a lot of them are unskilled or only skilled for that particular type of thing. And if jobs are tight and technology is taking their jobs, I guess I could ask you, where do you see the future of the transportation industry if everything goes technology?
Well, I don't see a change coming, in that route very soon. I don't see, people that are employed in that industry will still have their job over the next 10 years, maybe more than that. However, I think there will be a shift eventually if this technology performs well and it's much more cost efficient for companies and it's much more safer for operators on the road. So that there could be a change there. It really takes good government to make sure people are prepared for the jobs of the future, because with innovation, older jobs or some jobs will decline, but newer jobs will become available as well. We've seen this throughout history. It happens all the time. So my hope is that the government and people will be able to shift their resources and their recourses towards a different type of job or a different industry where they're still able to contribute to society.
We've talked about a lot, but now that we're on, I call it AI transportation, unfortunately, not just with single car accidents, but with, the transportation industry in general, driver fatigue. If someone is involved in an accident and it's their fault from driver fatigue and it involves other people, driver fatigue, is there a special category for that? Like alcohol, you're driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Is there a different type of category for being charged with driver fatigue?
Well, there isn't a different category under the law, and I think it's possibly because it's difficult to assess somebody's fatigue level. They don't for alcohol and drugs, they do actual scientific tests and they measure your level of alcohol, your level of drugs in the system. I don't know if they really have a test to say this person is this level of fatigued or not. But it still runs under the level of negligence. It's on the standard. If somebody, if you can show in a courtroom that somebody had been driving for 13, 14 hours, 15 hours straight and didn't take a break, didn't sleep, obviously you can prove, or you have a basis to prove that that person was operating negligently because they were fatigued. So it still goes back to the whole concept of negligence.
We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, I would like for you to summarize what we've talked about and give any closing comments that you haven't already given, okay?
Sure, thank you.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. This is my favorite person for today, Kush Shukla, Esquire. We've been talking about what are your legal rights if you're involved in an accident. We were talking about the huge pileup in last week and other pileups as well, but we've covered a lot of information. But what you just saw was a short commercial for me. That's right, Ms.B. I am now on TV. That's right. The local stations down in Atlanta is carrying me. I'm on the Praise the Word Worldwide TV network. You can find me on mostly everywhere, even DirecTV. Look at me. Who knew? But the flyer is out there. But every Friday morning at 9 a.m. East Coast time, you can find me. And my podcast is still out there too. But right now I'm on local TV as well as internet TV. And I'm basically be talking, if it's true, how's it working for you? I'll be using scriptures based on character traits. And, because so many people say, oh, I believe in the scriptures and I believe in this. Well, if it's true, how's it working for you? Let's just talk about that. So that's what you can find every Friday morning at 9 a.m. right there on all those different platforms. But that being said, Kush, I have enjoyed this so much, but in case they're just joining us and expecting us to stay on for an hour, which I don't think we are, give them a short recap of what we talked about and anything special you would like to add on this topic.
Yeah, sure. Well, before the recap, I just wanted to congratulate you on all the accomplishments you've received lately and the new opportunities. This is amazing. I'm really happy for you.
Thank you.
And so just to summarize, if you're in an accident, the first thing you need to worry about is your safety. Make sure you're okay. If you have to pull over to the side of the road, if you can, then I would strongly recommend you do that. Make sure to call the police, wait there, get a police report. Be extremely careful about any statements you make to the police. You can decline to make a statement. If you want to speak to an attorney, call an attorney. But make sure you get the police report. That's extremely important. And then also get any medical attention that you need right then and there. And like I said earlier, sometimes if you are involved in a car accident, you may not experience injuries until a week later. It really depends. But then after you've taken care of yourself and make sure you're okay, I would strongly recommend that you talk to an attorney to make sure that your rights are preserved. There are tremendous amount of deadlines that you may need to meet in order to maintain a personal injury car accident matter. So it's extremely important to make sure you meet those deadlines so you're not having to worry about medical bills, not having to worry about getting the treatment that you deserve in order to make sure you're up and running again. Many attorneys do not charge you for consults, and they do not. They only charge you if they win the case on your behalf, and it's usually 1/3. It's basically what I do as well in my practice, and I handle cases all across the country involving motor vehicle accidents. If you want to speak to me, you can call me. I'm giving you my cell phone right now. It's 646-961-5859. The number again is 646-961-5859. Like I said, if you're involved in an accident, we want to help you out to see if there's anything I can do for you. And, a lot of the times, like I said, it's very important you speak to an attorney as soon as possible because there are deadlines that you need to meet.
And, those deadlines are very important because so many people have said, oh, I got time. No, you don't have time. But anyway, you can contact him also. You still with Meirowitz and Wasserberg?
Yes.
Okay, so I have the information for Meirowitz and Wasserberg on the exit of this episode, on every episode. And I just really appreciate him taking the time out to talk to us. It's like free advice. He's my own legal aid, legal shield. So please take heed. And the main thing, no, I will say two. Don't ignore deadlines and keep your mouth shut. Sometimes you just convict your child, zip it. That's all I'm saying. Just zip it, especially if there's nobody there to give you legal counsel, because fear, anxiety, it would just either make you lie or tell too much of the truth. Am I right, Kush?
You're 100% correct.
All right, everybody. Kush, I'm going to make y'all laugh. That's my eye candy once a month right there, y'all. All right, everybody. This is Ms.B, Positive and Ms.B. Please look me up on Fridays at 9 a.m. I'm now on TV. I'm on Roku and many other platforms. The Lord has just expanded my territory. So, and I will be taking a lot of my interviews with me by doing short clips and then talking about them. And so next Friday, you just may see Kush there with me. You just never know. All right, everybody, y'all have a blessed day. And again, his information is on the exit. Have a blessed Sunday and the rest of the week.